enormously grateful sex and love addict. And I'm so honored to be with you all today. And it's an honor to be in recovery. And I see so many familiar faces that I've known for a long time. Some of you were here when we started this meeting on August 1st, 2020. And then, of course, so many new faces that I really, really want to welcome. And so I'd like to begin with the third step prayer, if you don't mind. And it's really an important prayer to me. So, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen. So thank you. My sobriety date is March 20th, 2012, which is Wednesday. I'm keeping my fingers crossed I make it. And I want to tell you not what March 20th was like. I want to tell you what it was like from like February 5th-ish to March 19th. Now that's not very long. My butt in the seat qualifier was a man I had only known, I'd only seen him 2 times, and I had only known him by phone from approximately February 5th until March 19th. And he was a man I met on eHarmony who told me he loved me before we ever met. And, we just had this ridiculously giddy, love addicted, just mushy wishy. He was telling me he was standing in meetings in Calgary. He was from Calgary. Already told me he could move to Newport Beach if that's what we decided. He could do his job anywhere in the world. Now it is so comical for me to tell you this, that we were grown adults. He was a grown adult standing in business meetings, people going, "What's going on with you?" I call him Neil number one. There have been two Neils. What's going on? And he would confess to business meetings that he was in love. So, I'm sure he feels even more foolish than I did at the time. So, but the problem was that I'm a sex and love addict. And I was getting high. I was getting all of my endorphins just really popping from somebody else giving me love, attention, validation, and approval. Like I needed it. It was my drug. My drug has legs and my drug can talk. And so I have to be on guard about my drug. So it came unraveling very quickly because he was not the same person in person as he was by phone. By phone and text, and at that time we were Skyping. um, he was this high energy, and he just gave me all this lava. He would write these long emails, and so much so that I had to say, I'm so sorry. I just can't keep up. This is a love addict's dream, right? Like he's just pouring it on so thick. I just said, I can't keep up. And so, but in person, you guys, he was really bland. He was really unemotional. And, I know now that he was very love avoidant. And so it was safe for him to just pour it on when we weren't together. And so, but when we got together, I remember the first time we got together and he came to visit in Newport. And it was not on Valentine's, but it was right around then. And I had somehow gotten him to give them permission to give me the keys. I didn't know this person. I hadn't met him. I completely decorated his room with Valentine's Day paraphernalia. I just was my son told me I was extra. I guess I'm a little extra. And I had completely just, done all this in his room. But when he arrived, he was very bland. And I remember thinking, he's sitting right next to me. We're driving around and where's Neil? I miss Neil. And I didn't know it then, but what I missed was all that lava he was giving me, all of that intense, and it was intense love, attention, validation, and approval by phone and text and email, but not in person. So, like, okay, I'm gonna have to adjust to this a little bit. Neil, number one, in person is a little bit different. And then we had a break because he went back to Calgary. And then we met in San Francisco for his birthday. And he had authorized me to make reservations at all of the Michelin five-star restaurants and all of the James Beard chef restaurants. And so I had a party doing that. But when he got there, the minute he got in the car, in the Uber that took us to our hotel, um, he just turned to me and he said, "You're really intense." And I'm thinking that's a compliment. I'm thinking this is good. And it wasn't. And he just shut down even more. And so, today I understand the cycle of love addiction and love avoidance is that me as the love addict comes forward like big and bold, and they come forward, and then it's too intense, and they turn and walk, and I come forward more. They finally turn and come. It's just this dance. And when I had read that in Pia Melody's book, Facing Love Addiction, it was like, that is me. That is really me. So to see it right in front of me was really shocking. And so we were traveling around, San Francisco, one of my favorite cities in the world, and he's just bland. He's hardly speaking to me unless he's sitting across the table from me at one of these Michelin five-star restaurants or James Beard award-winning chef restaurants. And I can't figure out what's wrong. And I'm in bathrooms all around Union Square, all around San Francisco, like calling my friends. And, if I had called any one of you, you would have gently said, "It's okay if you go home, Alicia." Because it was like a 4-day trip, which is insane now. I will not go on a 4-day trip with a man I've been sober dating for a month or two. Like I really need to know somebody. So anyway, my friends were saying, just stick it out, just hang in there, it's all going to be okay. Well, it wasn't. I was coming apart at the seams, and of course we were still being sexual together because I'm hoping something's going to click. So it never did. And I was just spiraling into what my worth was all about, was my sexuality, my body, my appearance. It was all this image management, as we call it. And my image management wasn't working with this man. And so, I really was despondent and in despair. And so he took me to the airport on, March 19th, and gave me just a lovely, goodbye. And, I went to my gate and he went to his gate. And then what the holy MF just happened? I couldn't figure it out. It's so beyond me. My intelligence couldn't figure it out. Graduated top 2% of my class at Pepperdine University. Didn't matter one bit. And so I got to my gate and he called. And I said, "Oh, hell no, I am not taking that call. This is so messed up," because I was aware that there's this vast difference. Like he's getting his drug the way he needed his drug too. He's got his shtick and I've got my shtick, and it wasn't coming down very well. And I was standing in line in one of the restaurants. Every time I pass it now, I pause and I just stare at this spot, knowing that that was one of my most poignant moments The janitor for the airport came over while I was waiting in line to order my breakfast, and he changed the liner to the trash can, emptied the trash can, and he looked up at me and he said, "You look so beautiful today." Oh, you could have just given me a shot of heroin straight into my arms. I felt it. I felt it physically. Like, that's what I need. And I thought, oh, I'm in so much trouble. I'm in so much trouble. And I had been to SLAA 14 years prior to this, right around the time, if you all recall, when Saturday Night Live comedian Phil Hartman's wife shot and killed him. And then she shot and killed herself while two little kids were in the bedroom next door or next to him. That was right about the time that also, some of you might remember Lorena Bobbitt. It was right about that time that I was really spiraling out with my flagship qualifier, who was my second husband and the father of my child, our child. And I got to an SLAA meeting then desperate because I could understand how those things happened. And that scared me. Like, I could see how I might be able to do those things in a moment of fear and despair and frustration. And the sad news that I have to report is there weren't any women's meetings in Orange County at that time. And I just couldn't relate to the way the male, symptoms of sex and love addiction are so different than the way the female, typically are, and talking a lot about pornography and massage parlors and masturbation and these kinds of things. So I'm not far from those, but my problem at this point, what I realized is total love addiction. Like, my love addiction just had me in the grip and I couldn't figure out for the life of me. So that day, standing there in line for my, my breakfast sandwich, and the janitor like giving me my hit, I just thought, I've got to get back to SLAA. I don't care if there's no women's meetings. I will sit in a meeting with all those men because I am in big trouble. Something is really bad with my life. Something is really bad about how I do relationships. And so I'm super grateful that March 20th, I had the honor of walking into a room just like this. Look at these women. Look at these women. Looking in your eyes means so much to me. Because when I walked in that room that night and these women were sitting there telling my story, and I can almost remember verbatim what some of them said. And sadly, they're not still around. And I just remember, this is it. This is it. I am going to do whatever it takes because I am in a shit ton of trouble if I don't. And so fortunately, um, fortunately, he went back to Calgary and he just said, I don't know. We didn't have any big knockdown drag out, but I cried. Talk about withdrawal. When some of you women share about withdrawal, your skin is crawling. And you think those of us who sit on this side of recovery can't relate to you because we're smiling and happy now. Sister, it was miserable. And I cried every single day for at least 30 days. And I did the goofiest thing ever as a symbol, really into these signs and symbols. I took every single one of those snotty tissues and I put them in a baggie because that visual, like, this is what's happened to me because of I eventually figured out my love addiction to a man. I'm sobbing as a mature woman, intelligent, mature woman, and this man is making me sob every single day. And so that night, I had no idea what a bottom line was. I just knew I needed to stay the hell away from men. Like, I needed to stay away. And so I'm super grateful that I had come into the rooms of Overeaters Anonymous when I was only 19. And so I knew how to work the program. And I was taught to work kind of a hybrid HAL program is what I know it to be today. I had a Nazi sponsor. Everybody knew she was a Nazi sponsor. She was sponsored by an AA circuit speaker, priest, and who also worked an OA program. And I just hung on every word that she said. If you can imagine the most opposite person in the world of me, that was Phyllis. And quiet, demure. But what I did when I got to that meeting that night, I pulled all of that forward. Okay, can't find a sponsor, but what did I do that has kept me abstinent and free from the bondages of binge eating, compulsive binge eating?
That's
And it
15.
was, thank you so much. And so I started making those phone calls. That was what I had to do. I had to make 2 phone calls a day, plus my sponsor. I had to do all kinds of writing around the steps. I took our characteristics. I wrote on how each of those characteristics was for me. There were 5 of them. No, there were 8 of them that were just like, okay, I'm these 8 for sure. And these 5 are just going to kill me if I don't do something about this. And I took it extremely seriously. I went back to school in my mind. I got a darling book bag. I carried my journal in it. I took notes at every single meeting, which I still do to this day. I had all of the literature, and I just thought, I'm going to change my brain. I'm going to flood it with everything positive and recovery oriented. And I'm going to have a normal life eventually. I'm at least not going to suffer. And at that point, I didn't even care if I ever dated again. I didn't care if I ever had sex again. I didn't care if I ever saw a man again, because I was so despondent and so desperate. And so, we had a couple of, this guy and I had a couple of bland, phone calls because he had to have been as shocked as I was. He had his own process he was going through, and we just decided, okay, we're not going to be in contact. So, but I knew immediately, I even knew that in the airport, that was one moment where my intelligence helped out. And I had no contact with him, and I had no contact. I stopped going to Starbucks because I did a lot of intriguing, gave my number to a lot of guys at Starbucks, and I just reeled it in. I just reeled it in. This is all about me. This is all about me and my journey of finding myself, of healing. I didn't know then that what I was looking for was love, attention, validation, and approval from men. It just evolved as I was sponsoring. So the first year I didn't date. I couldn't even imagine dating. I had no clue who I was. I had nothing to give. Like, I had no hobbies. I had no values that I was aware of. It was all my number one thing was, is he the one? Is he the one? Is he the one? Is he the one? And in my disease, I can see it when I hear newcomers sharing occasionally. Oh, he's so amazing. We have so much in common. He's perfect for me. Our grandmothers went to the same elementary school together. I literally heard that one. That one wasn't in program. That was one of my friends. So that was me. And I knew that it was always he's the one and he's the one. And my friends were sick of it. My friends were all done with hearing about my dating escapades. And they would say, just like many of you have heard, just go slow. Anybody else heard? Just go slow. And you might as well be talking Greek to me. I had no idea what just go slow meant. And herein lies the reason that a sober dating plan is critical. My mind does not think sober thoughts, sober action. My mind is all about let's have fun. Let's like get this party started. And so I even have to this day this idea in my mind. I don't want anybody raining on my parade. Like, don't you rain on my parade. And so I've had to like look at how that can be a saboteur of my recovery. So that, you know, the sober dating plan was really important. So at about a year, I still didn't have a sponsor, and newcomers were pouring in, and there just weren't sponsors. And our meetings in Orange County at that time were like attending a funeral. Yeah, that wasn't that attractive. They were like attending a funeral, because when you've got people who aren't progressing through the steps and progressing in sobriety and getting the goodies, like I want the juice, I want the joy, I want the freedom from all of this. So if you're sitting in a room and everybody's still repeatedly cycling around, it's not very positive. It's not very happy. And so, I just kept coming back and kept sharing, what it was like to be in no contact, what it was like to be in withdrawal, and what it was like to just stay the course. I would see all kinds of detours that I could take. But the beauty of recovery really is once we surrender, I admitted I was powerless. My life was unmanageable. Like that is one of the very biggest things. An unmanageable life. I do not ever want an unmanageable life again. Like an unmanageable life means we can start out on one course, and by, a few hours, a few minutes later, it's down a totally different course. So, like I just had to find some manageability up to my life. And so I knew that sobriety was that. So I eventually was able to set bottom lines. And my number one bottom line is I don't do the he's the one syndrome. I can, in sober dating, I've had 6 sober relationships and 6 sober breakups, which is really important. Every single one of those sober breakups is absolutely just as important as the sober relationship, because breakups, not sober breakups, but breakups are what tend to get us here the most. So more people get to SLAA because of breakups and affairs. Than anything. So every single one of those, breakups was really important to my recovery. So I dove in, and at about a year, no, before the year, hey, I'm just going to ask if we can put the chat on hold for a second. It distracts me a little bit. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So sorry. So at about 6 months in, I knew what was going to keep me from feeling the joy was shame, 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 like shame about all the antics I had done as a woman internally of dignity and grace. My behavior did not reflect dignity and grace, and so that shame just, I could feel it like corroding in my heart and soul. And so still didn't have a sponsor. And so I did one of the most powerful 4 steps I've ever done in my life. And it was just, I just wrote down every single thing that I felt shame over. And so I had gone to a therapist at one of the local churches that was free therapy. And I'd ask for the person who had the most experience in the department, like maybe somebody who might be graduating soon. I really don't want to throw all this on your first year, interns. And so I had this woman, and I took my 4 step that was just total shame. It was everything I felt shame about, why I felt shame about it. And I took it to her and I read it to her. And it was one of the most powerful things that I did in that early recovery, is that I knew that shame had me binging. That was part of what had me binge eating. And that getting rid of all that was going to make a big difference. And it didn't matter that she had no clue about sex and love addiction, because she would say to me, "Oh, that's not that bad. Oh, you shouldn't worry so much about that." And inside, I just thought, it doesn't matter at all what she says. It just says that we share this with another person that we trust. She wasn't anybody I knew. She was sworn to secrecy. what she had to say didn't matter one bit. And so that was one of the most powerful steps. I did have the opportunity to make amends to, men that I broke up with for ridiculous reasons. And one of them said something similar, like, yeah, it's okay, Alicia. It wasn't that bad. Like, yeah, it was. You didn't deserve to be broken up with at all. But my love addiction is overreactive on everything. Oh, you didn't tell me you loved me by noon today. You're in trouble. Something's wrong. So I had no idea that I was overreactive about everything. And so, I've had the opportunity over 12 years to learn that, my feelings aren't facts and I don't have to be so reactionary. And part of that has come from meditation. Like meditation has given me a very wide bandwidth to handle, I still have all these emotions from time to time. So, but the meditation has given me this bandwidth to be able to learn how to sit with and to process, like to learn how to hold my own hand and walk through these things. And so, the family that I came from, my mother was reactive. She was very abusive. She was one who like held my head under a pillow when I was like 5 and beat the crap out of me. And so like yeah, everything revolved around her. No one else was allowed to have feelings except her. And, when I was 5, we moved from, I'm going back a little bit, and I'm going to come back to where I was. When I was 5, we moved from the farm. I was born on a farm in Oklahoma, Luther, Oklahoma, population 238 at that time. And when we moved to the city, to Oklahoma City, my parents didn't give me my own bedroom. So I had 2 older brothers who were 10 and 11 years older than me. And I was told to sleep with them, and so both of them molested me. I eventually, one of them was violent molesting. The other one did it one time, and I'm not minimizing that at all. But the one who's now deceased was very aggressive and very violent. And so I had the opportunity in recovery to confront my whole family about that sexual abuse. Like I picked up the phone and I called every single, both of those brothers, my mom and my dad, and I let them know exactly what happened. And, one of my brother who's still alive, just, I am very sorry. I would never want to hurt you. I love you. And if I could have scripted it, it couldn't have been better. And we definitely speak today. The other one, oh, I don't remember that, but if I did, I'd really be sorry. And Jesus is coming and you need to make your relationship with mom right. Mind you, mom was my first qualifier ever. And I said, no, I need to go. And so, spoke to my dad, and my dad was, the biggest teddy bear ever, but didn't really have the ability. He was a good Al-Anon, let's say. He didn't have the ability to confront anything. And I can understand why it was all really overwhelming in our household. But he just said, damn those boys, I'm going to have a talk with them. So at least he had a reaction. When I told my mom, because I was coming at this from, I have a compulsive eating disorder that's destroyed my life. And here's part of the reason why. And as I told her how it affected my eating disorder, she said, oh, I've got a good cabbage soup recipe for you. And she literally started telling me the ingredients. She started telling me how to make cabbage soup and God bless her. I really have incredible compassion for her. Her generation, you just didn't air your dirty secrets. And she was abused by her father. And we're American Indian, and the whole, American Indian community, and probably globally, but at least in Oklahoma, was very much into drugs and very much into alcohol. And so God bless her, and that's the best that she could do at that time. 6 months later, let's fast forward 6 months. Thank you. Someone's really reminding me to stay grounded. I appreciate it. 6 months later, my phone rang one day, and we didn't have call waiting then. We didn't have caller ID then. And I answered the phone, and somebody was sobbing on the other end of the line. And it was my abusive brother. And he said, I do remember, and I am very sorry. And Jesus is coming, and you need to repent your sins. And I said, thank you for calling. Goodbye.
15 minutes remaining.
Thank you so much. And so, what I learned at that time from that being sexualized at such a young age, and my mom had this way because she was sexualized. And so she would tell me, put on your makeup and put on your perfume. We're going to go see my boss today. And so she was like really cultivating that. So when I got to SLAA, even though I had 3 decades of amazing recovery, working the steps diligently, the credits don't transfer. The credits don't transfer. Let's get a megaphone here. The credits don't transfer. What did transfer was faith, knowing the steps worked, and really knowing that you got to work for it. Those were things that I brought with me. So in SLAA, as a woman who really is a woman of dignity and integrity and grace, I've learned that my value is far more than my body, far more than my booty, far more than my breasts. That my value is the intelligence, the laughter, the big heart, the commitment that I have to my own personal growth. Like, I am the totality of a woman. I am not a body or a face. And that's kind of who I was when I got here. I didn't know any better. So there's been lots of forgiveness around that. And my flagship qualifier, I found something in one of my journals that I want to share with you. My flagship qualifier was my second husband, who was like a painful narcissist, a pathological narcissist. And I wrote, my marriage to husband number 2, my flagship qualifier, was almost the death of me. I never dreamed a human being could be so selfish, so mean, so insensitive, and completely void of empathy. But he was. I was blinded by my sex and love addiction. I was raised a very sheltered life that involved an isolating, cultish religion. I was naive, and I just didn't know that chemistry is dangerous and deceiving, and that I could have chemistry and feel attracted to someone who was very, very bad for me. So that sober dating plan is so important for me, because chemistry is really, really dangerous. It's wonderful, but it's really, really dangerous. So today, what recovery looks like for me is being able to live a really big life. And part of what's been really important from time to time is having no contact and blocking. I've dated 2 out of my 6 relationships. 2 of those men, I would say, were qualifiers. The rest were just nice men that we didn't have any, enough in common to continue on. And so blocking, like having no contact and blocking that contact, like, you don't get to talk to me. If you are bad for me, remember, there's no new hurts. Like, that's the deal. Like, my commitment to myself is to love myself so much that I'm not welcoming in anybody, friends, family, male, female, boyfriends. I'm not welcoming in somebody who's going to bring emotional hurts, or certainly not physical hurts either. So the blocking and no contact, like ruthlessly, is so, so important. Like, I am the prize. I am the gift. I am the prize and the gift to me. And if we're going to be moving into a relationship that's going to involve intimacy, I am absolutely the prize. And I don't serve any of that up on a silver platter anymore. Like, that has to be earned by someone who treats me like they love me. You know, love has to look like love, sound like love, and act like love. I'm not making excuses for anybody anymore. I am far too old to start trying to train somebody. There is no more, this is not a training facility here. This is joy in recovery and joy in life. And yes, there's conflict, and I have a much better access to be able to handle conflict with dignity today. You know, that reactionary person just isn't there. So I would be remiss if I didn't say how much of the last 12 years has helped me stay sober is service. Service in every single form that you can imagine. And so at about that 1 year mark, these two darling newcomers came to me, and I didn't have a sponsor. And so I didn't have a clue what I was doing, really. But they kind of demanded that I sponsor them because they couldn't find sponsors either. And my advantage was that I did know how to work the program. I did know how. And so I began sponsoring, and it was just one of my greatest joys. I created something called like a syllabus of, like, this is how I sponsor, this is what I do. And for most of my sober life, I've sponsored around 10 women. There were a few years in there where I sponsored 4 women. My son was 12 when I came into the program. And one of the most beautiful gifts of recovery is that he's gotten an amazing mom. And he's gotten the very best of me. And I'm so, so proud of that. Is that he didn't see me. Fortunately, I divorced his dad when he was only 1 year old. And that was a rough time. It was a horrible time. But he never saw me sobbing about his dad doing one more thing. He never saw that love addicted part of me, that my my bedroom wasn't so much a revolving door, because I had gotten a lot of self-worth from working the 12 steps in OA, but my house was a revolving door. It was just really trying to see who the one was. And so service, in whether it's a sponsoring, as I shared, this meeting began on August the 1st, 2020, in an effort to help women hear the whole story about recovery. And so that's been just a beautiful journey. And unbeknownst to me, this whole lava thing has taken on a life of its own. And what I mean by that is that, one of the groups that was my actual home group in Tustin, California, was never came back to an in-person meeting, but their Zoom meeting was floundering. And, over the years, I really saw the core of my disease was my search outside myself for love, attention, validation, and approval. And so, constantly seeking that, I realized one of the first things that I did is I had to learn how to give that to myself. I didn't know it then, but I self-abandoned. I was into self-neglect because I wasn't honoring my own emotions. I wasn't honoring my own most important basic needs. And so learning that journey of how healing it was to the trauma that I experienced, learning to love myself. And I want to share something else that I wrote recently. I wish I could remember these things, but learning how to love myself unconditionally is the final frontier for my evolution and expansion, and could possibly save my world. And so I really believe that I have the opportunity that with my loving myself unconditionally, I've felt this incredible expansion and discovered something that I didn't even know existed. And this is part of the evolution and expansion that's so important. I discovered something called insidious shame. And the insidious shame is all this little stuff everywhere because I was given so much shame. The religion I was raised in, it was like shame central. And so, therefore, I realized that in the back of my head, I've always got this feeling of I'm bad. I did something wrong. A police car pull up behind me. I'm perfectly good there, but suddenly I'm bad. I did something wrong. Get a call from some sort of authority figure that wants to thank me for a speech I gave or something. Oh, I'm bad. I did something wrong. And so this insidious shame, I didn't have any idea how rampant it was running in my system, in my body, in my mind. And so learning that insidious shame, for me to be able to say to that shame, I see you. Like, I see you and you are not welcome here. Get out. There's no reason for me to feel shame. I did nothing wrong. And to be able to get beyond that. And the same with unworthiness. Like when I see myself not doing something, like paying attention to my sleep, paying attention to my personal preferences, like I am worthy to have all of the things that I want and enjoy in life. That worthiness is so important. And the validation, I made a list of all the things that I wanted to hear from my mother that I never heard. And I began to tell those to myself, and it's so powerful. And I'll share the article in the chat after I finish so that you can see those things that I shared. And I looked at how I get to be my own loving, nurturing, caring parent. And that SLAA has taught me how to do that at the highest level and to not cheat on myself. And that approval, I'm not sitting here trying to give myself an approval or disapproval, but acceptance, like to give myself love, attention, validation, and total self-acceptance. That no matter what happens, no matter who I am, no, I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to crumble in tears if I feel that pain. I'm allowed to learn how to hold my own hand and walk through feelings without acting out in any way, without any self-harm. And I learned that the negative thoughts that I have that can easily come in, that's self-harm. I heard that it was emotional cutting. Like I have got to pay attention to the neighborhoods that my brain goes in and be very careful with it. So, and so what has happened is that many of you know that there are now 4 dedicated lava meetings where together we're learning how to give ourselves this love, attention, validation, and total self-acceptance. It has been an unbelievable journey of unconditional
2.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you so much. And so I'm super grateful. And so, a lot of questions come to me, and I'm grateful for that. But like, what's it like at 12 years of sobriety? I have an amazing relationship with my son who tells me more than I could have ever imagined telling my mom. Last night we were on the phone and he said, Mom, I just want to let you know Jason just got in the car, but keep talking. Okay. So his friends getting in the car. And, when I was done with whatever I was telling me, he's okay, Mom, I hope you have a good evening. I love you. So he's telling me he loves me in front of his friend, Jason. It was precious. These are priceless moments that I was never going to have. I get the power, the dignity of choice and the power of intention in my sober dating is that if I don't, feel the magic, if I don't feel it, I don't have to keep going out with somebody. I get to choose whether I want to date or not. I'm not like, okay, got to date, got to date, got to date. Right now I have very high priorities contributing to the whole lava process. And so that's really my focus. So I'm choosing not to sober date right now. And that's wonderful. I'll choose to again. And I know how to behave with dignity and integrity and grace. And I get the juice and the joy of this program. I've just completed my second silent meditation, 10-day silent meditation retreat. And the power of the pause in that is so amazing. So if you're new or nearly new
It's 11
here,
o'clock.
or if you're struggling, I just really invite you to don't stop before the miracle happens, because there will be a miracle if you keep working the program and get in the center of it, like getting in the center of the program. So I'm so honored to share this day with each of you. Your smiling faces around the world just means so, so much to me. So I'm sending you all so much love and big, 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 big hugs. And thank you for letting me share.